People who have two radio concentration camp. What was the most disrespectful thing you saw another tourist doing? Taking photos in areas you're told specifically not to. I also saw a lot of graffiti on the walls of the bunks. That made me feel sick. The level of disrespect and lack of awareness of where you are to inscribe your name on something like that baffles me. I thought it was original at first and from the people that were held there, but then I saw 2016 and was here next to names. Doodling on the walls would probably have gotten a prisoner beaten, at the very least. At Dachau I saw two people, late teens, early 20s, bending each other over actual whipping blocks pretending they were carrying out BDSM crap. Went to Sachsenhausen and I made a joke about one of our group not being terrible enough to take selfies there. Turned around and found her taking selfies there. Freaking heck, it's so sobering there. I'm so glad my group wasn't like this. I saw a couple making out and grabbing each other's asses when they thought no one was looking at Sachsenhausen a few weeks ago. Nothing like a visit to a concentration camp to bring out the butt grabbing in people. I was at Buchenwald with a group of friends at the same time as a school party of German kids. Being English, we couldn't understand what they were saying and weren't paying much attention to them anyway, but our German friend told us that a lot of the kids were making edgy Holocaust jokes. I thought mocking the Holocaust while German was grounds for getting you crap pushed in by other Germans. It didn't happen when I was visiting, but it was quite the news here. Some people were trying to catch Pokemons in Auschwitz soon after the game had been released. I remember that. What made it worse was that the game was spawning coughing there. Well, I guess pleased to say is technically the correct term, that everyone who was at Dachau on that particular day was somber, respectful, and completely freaking horrified at what humans are capable of doing to other humans. Yeah, Dachau is the one my friend and I went to a few months back, and we didn't see anything disrespectful. Taking weird grimace selfies in one of the reconstructed gas chambers, I was dumbstruck for several seconds while the reality of that settled in. Social media has one benefit: you can spot all the sociopaths narcissists a mile away, like those people, and the randoms that do Facebook Live or Snapchat stories taking about the boring crap they did today, thinking people care. Not quite a concentration camp, but I went to part of the Burma Railway in Thailand. My own granddad was a POW of the Japanese along here somewhere, so visiting the memorial museum was pretty gut-wrenching. Some fuckwit flung open the museum door and was like, alright, where's the bar? Wish I would have said something to him. I don't know what the Japanese were doing to prisoners. There was a concentration camp, just in Asia. Don't blame you for feeling like you did. At Camp Westerbork, Netherlands, there is a memorial with a lot of stones of different heights. On top of those stones they're supposed to have a metal Star of David, but most of them were stolen. For souvenirs, I think. Queuing up at the entrance, I heard an Australian woman loudly telling her hyperactive kid something along the lines of, "This is where they take bad people to punish them, so you'd better not misbehave or you'll end up like all the bad people who died here." Jesus Christ. At the Holocaust Museum in Washington, DC, there was a couple taking smiling, laughing selfies in front of a lot of the exhibits, because the Holocaust Museum is where you go to have a ton of fun. When I visited in 2006, photos were not allowed. Not a concentration camp, but while visiting the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam and viewing the hidden room where her family lived, one person said aloud, "I would literally kill someone to have a place this size in Manhattan rent-free." It was horrifying. The second it came out of my mouth, I regretted it intensely. The second it came out of my mouth, I regretted it intensely. Plot twist. I visited Auschwitz last year and saw a group of kids from Israel. I'm assuming it was a school field trip as they all the same uniform on. But they could not stop taking selfies and making jokes like they were getting gassed. Also, two old ladies that kept talking during moments of silence about how disrespectful everyone else is. In Dachau, two girls about 20 years old decided to get on the bunks and spoon whilst taking a selfie. Couldn't believe my eyes. Went to Dachau with some family friends. I told them to avoid taking happy selfies. I heard someone comment, "Alright then, I didn't know it was a crime to be happy." Should have asked them what they would be happy about. When I toured Shore, we had a group of teenagers from the US in the group with us. At one point we were standing in the central courtyard and one of the teen boys picks up a fist-sized rock, stares at it for a second, then asks his group fairly loudly, "Do you guys reckon a Jew was bludgeoned with this?" Everyone in the tour group stared at him shocked for a minute before he was asked to leave. Might be one of the most horrifying things that I've ever heard. In North America, men don't understand the gravity of the war. My grandfather is an Italian immigrant to Canada in the 50s, but he said how they needed blackout curtains on the windows to prevent the city being bombed, and how constant sirens and air sweeping lights were going. He doesn't ever say more. Went to Auschwitz on a school camp and a couple boys in my class started marching in sync while doing the Hitler salute. Our teacher noticed, started smiling and took a picture of them. That is not the response I expected from a teacher. My dad got all lathered up at Dachau when some Japanese tourists asked him for directions to the gift shop so they could buy some of that Jewish soap. Holy crap. I was with 11 other students from my school. One commented on how another classmate was basically sobbing because she wanted attention, but in reality crying girl's grandmother was sentenced to the exact camp that we were at, Dachau, if anyone is wondering, because she was Jewish. The same girl also commented some other very rude things. I don't get the big deal. There she goes crying again. Everyone wants to give her attention when she cries, but not me. I had to keep my already angsty fired up teen self calm or else I would have punched her in her throat. She ruined a lot of the trip, between that, showing off her new H&M thong, as in underwear, to a male teacher, whining about attention, self-loathing and turning us totally around in Italy and getting us lost. By the time we got to Athens I told the teacher if he didn't shut her up I was going to throw her out the third-story window. I didn't want to leave Europe, but I wanted to go home because that meant getting away from her. If he didn't shut her up I was going to throw her out the third-story window. That's really more a Prague thing. Not a concentration camp, but I had the opportunity to visit one of the Japanese internment camps a few years ago on a cultural awareness trip through my school. This was a huge deal. People who aren't descended from those interned there are almost never allowed to visit, and the area is maintained guarded by the Native American tribe on whose land the camp was built. It was a haunting, humbling, and very emotional experience that has stayed with me through all that time. We got kicked out and future trips are not allowed to visit. Why? Because a few of the students who came with us decided it would be super fun to take pictures of themselves doing handstands on some of the building remains, jump off things, run around, and just in general they were vastly disrespectful of the area. We were allowed to take pictures for personal viewing, but were told to do so respectfully and not to post them online or make a spectacle out of it. We had the privilege of hearing about the experience from a few people who had either lived nearby or had been interned at the camp as children, and during that entire period these same students talked through it amongst themselves, cracked jokes, and again were very disrespectful. To this day I am still pretty angry that they couldn't have been respectful for just a few hours, and in doing so ruined the chance for future students on that trip to visit the grounds. There are two things that stick out to me. People eating, like people just busting out Oreos and munching down while looking at piles of human hair and teeth. It's odd. I've gone more than once to various camps, and there are always people snacking. The first time I went to Auschwitz at 15 I had a panic attack. As a Polish Jew it was very, very hard for me. I was sitting in front of the visitors center trying to calm down when this woman handed me a leaflet comparing the Holocaust to abortion. I've never, ever wanted to beat the crap out of someone so badly. Not a concentration camp, but when I visited the USS Arizona Memorial they explicitly state before the ferry ride over that you will be standing over a gravesite and to be respectful of that by being quiet. Every single person there was being exceptionally loud. The guides aboard the memorial looked ticked off as well. I wish they took care of that issue like they do at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. People tend to shut up when an armed soldier with robotic discipline shouts at them. I didn't see anyone doing it, but when I was at Mauthausen, we walked through the room where prisoners were forced to strip down and showered, for lack of a better word, on the walls, behind plexiglass for preservation, were carvings from prisoners with their names, dates, and other things to show that they were there and they were being mistreated. I was horrified and disgusted to see that tourists had graffitied their names, dates, Ryan plus Jess forever and LOL, under the edges of the glass on top of the victims' names. I lost my faith in modern society that day. Same. We also went to Mauthausen and there was crap scribbled all over the bunk beds. When I visited Auschwitz-Birkenau, there was a girl eating a bag of Cheetos as we walked through one of the crematoria and giggling and laughing with her group the whole time. It took every ounce of self-control I had to not deck her. I was a part of an American exchange student group in Poland. One of the students with us was black and was dealing with a lot of crap already at the all-white school. When we too raided the camp, a group of kids were calling her the N-word, which finally broke her down into tears. I would have called the police for racist abuse. I don't get why people that is okay in any place, let alone at the site of mass murder and suffering. I was on a field trip at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and I was in the exhibit that showed doctors testing on prisoners of the concentration camps. A couple girls began to laugh while looking directly at horrifying images of the human tests. I confronted the girls in the lobby and told them they were being super disrespectful and fricked up. Being older now, I'm pretty proud of my 8th grade self for confronting them. Way to put them in their place. When I visited Auschwitz-Birkenau, there was a small group of evangelicals along the edge of the outside of the camp trying to proselytize. I had been sobbing pretty much from the moment I walked in to the moment we left, and we saw them as we were leaving. And to see these people trying to covet us, a group of Jewish studies students at that horrible place, I nearly screamed at them. Some members of my group had to pull me ahead to keep me from attacking. Oh my goodness. All of these are bad, but this one is just absolutely abhorrent. I don't even want to know what goes through the minds of these kind of people to make them think doing something like that is okay. I was stationed in Germany for a few years and my roommate was Jewish. For whatever reason, he introduced himself as Jew. Only the people we worked with knew his real name. My soon-to-be wife at the time didn't know him by any other name. While she was touring Dachau, guess who she ran into? With a big smile on her face, waving her arms yelling "Hey Jew" to get his attention. Hard glares and muffled whispers were everywhere. I went to Dachau and saw a bunch of French teenagers blasting loud rap music through some crappy Bluetooth speakers. I was surprised because we were the American group and we were supposed to be the disrespectful ones. I wouldn't say this was disrespectful, but it did baffle me. I went on a group tour to Auschwitz this year and I was stunned how people could return immediately to laughing, chatting, eating, etc. Right after seeing each camp, I felt too sick to eat anything or even reach out to family or friends for most of the day, and when I returned to Krakow I just walked around the city quietly for hours digesting everything. As I was walking I ran into a group of guys from the tour, and they commented on how emotional I'd seemed. They asked me if I was Jewish and I said yes, and I'd had ancestors who were killed in Auschwitz. They nodded, fascinated. It was then that it dawned on me that lots of people on the tour may not have grasped the significance the same way I had, because growing up Jewish you kind of have this crap shoved down your throat constantly. Also, there was a restaurant right next to Auschwitz. WTF. Yes, concentration camps always give me a ravenous appetite. A guy posing for a photo behind the fence at Dachau that has Arbeit marked frei, freedom through work, written on it. The guy taking the photo was me and the one posing was an American tourist I'd met at my hostel. Pretty much instantly after taking the pic I think we both realized it was in bad taste. Went with a couple of friends last year. One spent the entire time moaning that she was cold, hungry and tired. Felt a bit fed up after we read an exhibition all about how certain inmates would be taken out into the winter cold, have ice water poured on them and then left to freeze to death. And that still didn't stop my friends complaining. About 10 years ago, I went on a guided tour to Dachau. An older lady from our group would consistently fall behind, go missing, etc. From what I remember she was Jewish and obviously the whole experience was pretty rough for her. Our tour guide, while understanding at first, started getting frustrated from having to chase her down, making the rest of the group wait, etc. So after about halfway through she just said F it and left her behind. We finished the tour and the bus just headed back to Munich without her. When I went to Auschwitz there was an Asian couple that were taking selfies together on the train tracks and in front of the train cars. Posing in front of memorials. Seriously, how disrespectful can you be? I get that you want to take some photos of an area, but posing for Facebook likes is completely distasteful. I have been to Auschwitz once, and in the room where they have all the shoes and stuff, a guy stood pee, like literally pulled out his dong and took a pee. He got taken in by the cops not long after. We all were horrified by that. Even though you might be a Holocaust denier, that is crossing a big line. We never got to know what his deal was though, only speculated that he was a denier. Did a tour of Auschwitz in April, and the tour does Auschwitz 1 first, which you walk around the now museum sections. Then the very last place you go before heading over to Auschwitz 2 Birkenau is the first gas chamber and furnaces that were used. This was strictly no photography in this building. As you know, it's a pretty grim place. However, there was obviously one guy with a DSLR who ignored the rules. Disrespectful. However, he got overlooked completely. There was a couple on our tour group who had decided this was going to be the place to make out a bit and touch some boob. Just wow. There's not even words for it. There's a time and a place. I was outside Auschwitz after a very emotional morning when 2 American tourists approached me in the street. They pointed at Auschwitz and the woman said, "Is it fun in there?" I was very confused and she repeated the question and I said, "You do know that it's a concentration camp?" The woman said, "Yeah sure, but is it fun?" I apologized to the woman and explained I didn't know how to speak to her and then I walked away. You will see the true depths of human potential for darkness, shared by us all. Yeah, it's frickin' hilarious. I went on a tour of a bunch of concentration camps where I learned just how crappy some of friends at the time were. A guy and girl in my friend group snuck off the tour to go make out in Auschwitz. Just horrible. Went to Cambodia recently with a large group of people from school. We visited the killing fields. My boyfriend and I took our time and ensured to be respectful and listen, taking everything on the audio tour. It was incredibly depressing to learn how much horrible stuff had happened and how fresh it all still was for this country. More than half the group of people we were with rushed through, making jokes along the way and taking as many pictures as they could of little bones sticking out of the ground. And they then had the audacity to say, "Wow, can people hurry up, we wanna go do sick bombs in the pool back at the hotel." These people had peed me off before, but I had never been completely and utterly disgusted with them until that moment. There was a young couple, maybe late teens, early 20s, making out in the middle of Auschwitz when I visited. Just seemed so inappropriate and disrespectful. This is one of the worst ones to me. Jesus Christ. Was in Vietnam recently, at Phu Quoc prison. Terrible place, with countless atrocities by the US Army. Saw this one girl taking a selfie and saying out loud they got what they deserved. She was in our tour group and somehow found things funny. I have no idea how. Ridiculous behavior. Saw a bunch of tourists in our group decide to take selfies repeatedly, especially at areas where we got pointed out executions took place. A group of us in high school visited Manzanar, where Japanese Americans were held after Pearl Harbor. In the graveyard is a big white stone obelisk that serves as a shrine to those lost or formerly imprisoned. People leave offerings like cans with incense, flowers, pebbles, coins, things like that. One girl kept picking up things off the shrine and playing with them. It took me and another girl telling her to put them back and not to disrespect a monument to get her to stop. Actually, my dad was taking selfies with a big smile on his face everywhere. I don't think he realized what was so wrong with it, but me and all my siblings were just inching away from him with a look on our faces that said, "We're not with that guy." If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.